The changes for the CME's regulated cryptocurrency futures and options, including Bitcoin futures or options trading on CME Globex 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. CME announced the change would begin Friday, May 29th, 2026 at 4 p.m. CT, with at least a 2-hour weekly maintenance window over the weekend. So weekend and holiday trades still clear, settle, and report on the following business day. So the core announcement, the CME's move brings its crypto derivatives closer to Bitcoin's native, always open market structure. Previously, CME closed from Fridays to New York until Sunday evening when Asia opened. Now, of course, a lot of you that use CoinWins, definitely head over to CoinWins.app to get access to the best charting system that's available right now. Of course, we love TradingView. We use TradingView all the time, but to have all of these powerful custom tools that I've designed, you got to go here and check us out at CoinWins. And of course, I'll just bring up the Bitcoin chart right now, and you'll see some of these fantastic indicators here. Now, you'll notice that I've got the market maker sessions here live. Now, let me tell you, this is where one of the major changes is actually going to take place, and it is the sessions. Okay, during the closure that we typically saw over the weekend, Bitcoin continued trading on crypto exchanges, which often caused CME Bitcoin futures to reopen at a different price. That price difference created the famous CME weekend gap. Now, for us that use CoinWins, we can see that we have these trading windows right here. Even when we have the trading windows turned off and the indicator turned off, we can see the colors in the background that denote specific gaps and also specific reversal zones. Like here, the cyan would be the US reversal zones. And of course, this coral would be these extensions for Asia and UK extensions. These are still going to take effect, but we're going to be able to trade the markets in a bit of a different way. So the announcement essentially is that, like I said, the weekend gap, the weekend closure is no longer. Well, in some way it's no longer. But with the CME crypto futures and options moving 24/7 for trading, the classic Friday to Sunday gap structure is mostly gone. CME says the motivation is client demand for around-the-clock risk management. Of course, a lot of us are trading digital assets every single day, Monday to Friday, Monday to Sunday, regardless of price, regardless of time, regardless of region. And of course, now if you have institutional investors coming in during the week, but they can't touch anything during the weekends, it's a little challenging to them, to say the least. The exchange reported a record $3 trillion in notional volume across cryptocurrency futures and options in the year 2025. And they said always on access lets institutional clients manage exposure at any time. But again, these are settled and essentially cleared and reported the following business day. Let's keep that in mind. So why the CME gap mattered before, and we'll talk about essentially what makes it matter less now since it's no longer. Let's be clear about that, right? Before this change, the weekend closure created a predictable structure. And guys, on this channel and in the community, which I definitely recommend you guys join, we have been talking about this every single week in our strategy calls and our research and trade calls. And sometimes, of course, our community calls. So definitely, guys, join at least the premium tier to get access to the research and trade calls, because that's where we actually go through the trade system, the whole structure, and how to use the CoinWins system here and the charting system to understand how best to navigate the markets. So, for example, I'll quickly turn on the market maker sessions and the levels. These are some of my favorite indicators to use, okay? Well, we definitely have, you could see Asia starts here, and then we have the Asia extension, which is typically a rough time to enter. Sometimes you can find a good entry, but oftentimes you want to avoid the extreme volatility at this time. Now you can clearly see we have these signal candles that illuminate during specific high volume times. Okay, that's a proprietary system that I built to help us. But as you can see, all of the highs and the lows of the weeks and the previous days, they are way above price right now as price is tumbling. And now you guys know that I entered this short on Bitcoin at probably one of the best times possible. And you can see that short right here. I took the short in our community call. I know the chart looks really crazy right now, but you can see my short indicator right here. Enter the short here, and we are going short, and this trade is actually going perfectly to plan. I couldn't have asked for a better trade. Maybe I could have actually if I shorted all the way from here or up here, but this was a beautiful retest into our danger zone, and right now we caught that short very, very beautifully. Okay, so Friday CME close to, Bitcoin keeps trading everywhere else, and then Sunday CME reopens and the futures essentially catch up. This is where we get this visible CME gap, right? Now, essentially, the strategies around the CME gap historically often got filled. So meaning the price would later return to the gap area. But the Sunday open gap becomes the main, let's say, casualty of this 24/7 CME trading. So there's no weekend closure, which means no regular weekend gap formation. So typically what we would do is we would isolate this section here. As you see, this is the weekend, right? So this is Friday, and this whole section, as you see, the color on the background is essentially dark. It just typically means that price is going to consolidate. And as you see, price typically consolidates over the weekend or just goes sideways. Not every time, but typically that's the type of price action we can grow accustomed to. And as you see, the market pulse, it typically lets us know what range Bitcoin moves is typically moving or typically moves throughout these different ranges, time frames. So whether it's Asia, we typically see Bitcoin moving in a roughly 2% range just to consolidate, creating the initial high and the initial low of the day. And then we get UK, which either trends up to grab the liquidity above price that was set by Asia, or price moves down during UK, as you see it did here. And then US is often reversing whatever happened in UK. You can clearly see that right here, especially if I put it to the 15-minute. Perhaps it's a little clearer to see that exact price action, especially when we look over here. Right, we see Asia consolidating, then we see UK come and make an actual move in a direction, and then you see US reverse it. So this cyan area here is our reversal window, and these coral areas are our Asia and UK extension windows, which we typically avoid trading in. Typically, not always. But as you see, if I take these off, you could still see them laid out on the chart. So this is another reason why I strongly recommend joining us at CoinWins.app to get full access to all of these indicators. But I have to say that this is going to be changed. There will be updates made to CoinWins very soon, likely by the next time, or even possibly by the time you see this video. There will be updates that are more in line with this CME announcement that we see regarding 24/7 futures and options trading for Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. Okay, so the most important part of the trading system at CoinWins that will change would be essentially the gap disappears, but liquidity still behaves essentially in the same way. Okay, so the older system focused a lot on the weekly rhythm, so the Friday type of trap, which we mentioned a lot, and you can see that, of course, right here on the market pulse. Once Friday, you'll see that update very beautifully for you, super clearly for you, right, to understand what you can expect or anticipate from the market and typically Bitcoin in those time frames, right? And so we get the Friday trap oftentimes into weekend sideways consolidation, and Sunday, essentially the week reopens with a false move, then there's a real move. We see that all the time. It happens all the time. I mean, I can show you one. If we look at a Sunday right here, we can see there's a spike up on a Sunday, and then Asia brings it down. You can clearly see there's a spike up, and then Asia brought it down. That's typically what we would call the false move week beginning, right? So in the model, so the market maker previously used Friday or the weekend structure to trap traders into a position. They don't know if the price moves up or down. And then they use that liquidity somewhere around the Sunday open. Again, you can clearly see that here. There were levels set right here. This is the weekend gap from this point here. There's consolidation, and you see this level right here was hit. That created this high right there, okay? And then, let me go here, and then you can see, let me zoom in a bit more so it's a little clearer right there. So there's weekend consolidation, right? There's the Friday move to get people wrecked, you get trapped there, or you get trapped there. You either think price is going short or you think price is going long. The market maker traps you right down the middle, and then when the week opens, we get a false move up, and then the price doesn't end up ever coming back to this point. So we watch price over the weekends for those types of moves, but that is changing to some degree, okay? So retail traders get trapped into those positions, and Sunday opens somewhere in and around that liquidity, okay? But that trap was not necessarily because retail traders could not exit over the weekend. Okay, retail crypto traders could already trade 24/7 on many exchanges. And just by the way, there are decentralized exchanges on Bitcoin, despite what many people believe. You can use a DEX on Bitcoin. The more important point is that institutional participation, or participants essentially that were tied to the CME hours, had different constraints. Now that CME trades 24/7, we got to say the specific weekend CME open setup changes, but the broader behavior, so essentially liquidity gaps or stop hunts or even a false move and maybe even retail sentiment manipulation, can still occur. So the old framework changes from the CME gap plus the weekend trap plus Sunday false move open plus the weekly timing pattern. It might change a little bit to session structure. Of course, we're looking at liquidity levels. That is something, these levels here, that is something that will likely not change at all. And also institutional participation across all 7 days. So this might actually give us a better understanding of weekend price, and we can actually look at weekend price more seriously. So session-based trading becomes the primary weekly framework. And so let's say Asia, UK, and US sessions are essentially the new core structure. Whereas previously, these sessions mattered mainly for the 5-day CME trading week. Now they matter essentially across every single day of the week. When you look at these indicators and we look at the levels indicator, what we're looking at is the initial high of the day, the initial low of the day. Those are the main ones for capturing price and labeling price for this specific day. Whereas the high of the day and the low of the day, this is from yesterday's high of the day and yesterday's low, okay? So today's initial high of the day and today's initial low of the day will become tomorrow's high of the day and tomorrow's low of the day. And of course, the high of the week and the low of the week are the highest price went in the previous trading week. This is essentially how we find very specific levels, not arbitrary, not emotion-based levels. These are specific levels that the market maker allowed price to reach, whether high or low, and we still play within them, regardless of the CME opening, closing, weekend, 24/7 or not, right? So this may actually help us, especially new traders as well, because there's less to concern yourselves with. Okay, it required a lot of different questions. So like say, where's the liquidity over the weekend? How you got to watch the weekend? Was there an M or a W over the weekend? Are we in the Friday trap? Is it a reversal zone like this cyan area? Is it an extension like this coral area? Is it a gap like this gray area? All of this we still may consider, but we may not have to consider it in the same way. What direction is the gap? Maybe we're asking ourselves about the false move on Monday or Sunday night when Asia opens. If you're Eastern time, then of course that would be Sunday night for you. Is there a gap to fill? All of that stuff, we don't have to worry about any type of CME gap essentially. What we can focus on a little bit more now is the liquidity above price or below price? That's one major thing we can do. We can ask ourselves, which session is driving price? Sometimes we look and we notice, gosh, every time it gets to Asia, price moves. Every time it gets to Asia, price moves, as an example. Or in this case, maybe every time it gets to the US, price moves, or every time it gets to the US, price moves a little bit more. So we can monitor which session is moving price in which, to which degree, how much, and based on volume. Again, typically Asia is moving in a 2% range, roughly, and UK is moving price above liquidity or below liquidity. So again, like if, for example, you see that Asia set the high here and then Asia set the low here. Eventually, UK decided to take liquidity below price. And then again, US often reverses, often in the reversal window. And I said often, not necessarily always. We can also ask ourselves, like, which, where is price inside the weekly range, right? And by using the weekly range, to determine that, we can of course use the levels. So now we see that the high of the day is all the way here and price is well below the high of the week, which is all the way up here. So for price to go all the way back up here, it's super unlikely anytime soon at this, based on looking at the chart right now. But of course it is absolutely possible. But we now have a little bit less to focus on. So I think it's most important and useful to say that there's less emphasis on the mechanical day-to-day of the week rules that we used to follow. Again, we can still do it, but there's less of a emphasis on this mechanical rule for the days of the week, but more of an emphasis on the session behavior and liquidity. It's actually a little bit simpler. So weekend trading may become more legitimate. We may actually be able to see the real trend. So that means that Saturday and Sunday moves may become less of, let's say, noise or manipulation and more of the real direction. Because from time to time, we actually do get a move on the weekend that actually does show you where price is going, especially when you look at this particular weekend. This was a Saturday. We did have that nice spike up, that strong move right there. But then once Sunday came right in the pre-market where Asia was going to open, we had another spike, but it was a lower high. So this was actually the first weekend of this 24/7 futures and options trading that the CME had launched. So it launched on the 29th of May. This is the 30th. This was in effect the first opportunity for us to see just what could happen on a weekend. And yes, if we did trade that and we did take that initial move right there, we could have actually gone short if you weren't already short, which if you follow me and you are in the group or in the community, you would definitely be in the short already with your stop loss set way up here. And by now, all of us are in profit, because even if we move our stop losses down, we can move our stop losses down, and even if our stop loss gets hit, we are still actually in clear profit. Again, guys, join us at the community in the link in the description. So it's important to understand that a small gap type of effect may still exist, right? The classic weekend CME gap may disappear, but CME still has a maintenance window. And so we'll have to see exactly when that is, right? That is important to note. And of course, things do settle at the following business day. So again, there could be a bit of a gap. That's just the reality, right? But the old, let's say, Friday to Sunday gap system is probably dead. But traders should still watch the maintenance window as a possible volatility event. And it could be a weekly volatility event. Once that maintenance window is closed or opened or closed, we'll find out exactly when that is. We'll have to monitor these charts over the weeks and possibly months to see when that actually is. Because, guys, this could be updated. This could be something that they don't announce very clearly. We'll just have to wait and see. The main things that we want to take away from this in closing is that we want to understand what changed. The CME crypto futures and options now trade 24/7, which removes the regular Friday to Sunday closure that created the CME Bitcoin weekend gaps. That's essentially changed or essentially gone. What disappears? The classic weekend CME gap strategy becomes much less relevant going forward. Let's see what doesn't change. So liquidity gaps, stop hunts, of course, the false moves, Session manipulation and retail psychology, those are still the same. We know that's going to happen, and no matter what, CME is not going to, like, the market maker is not going to let us just break free just because now suddenly we have this, 24/7 trading of digital assets, okay? Within our system, what we must adapt to is that we must move away from this kind of gap filling and fixed weekend pattern assumptions. We just can't assume, especially now that we don't know exactly when this 2-hour maintenance window is. We'll do an update as soon as we do. And, we got to shift more towards session-based analysis across Asia, UK, and US sessions using all of these things that we mentioned: the high of the week, the low of the week from the previous day, the previous week, the high of the day, the low of the day, and of course, Asia session high and lows as the main liquidity map, because every week starts with Asia. That's just the reality. Monday starts with Asia, or Sunday night, depending on your time zone, starts with Asia. And Asia will still likely set the high and the low of the week. That's the initial high and the low of the week. That is something that we can't change. It's just the reality, right? So CME's 24/7 Bitcoin futures options trading ends the old CME gap era, but it does not end any type of smart money behavior. It shifts the edge from the weekend trap or the weekend gap mechanism or mechanics to a 7-day session liquidity analysis method. And so, of course, keep it locked here at CoinWins. Again, Justin Blends. CoinWins is where you can find advanced research simplified, and I'm super happy to announce that we do have an extension of CoinWins coming soon. So join us in the community at the link. And of course, check this video on exactly how you can actually understand how to find undervalued digital assets, crypto assets, by using liquidity, market maker activity, and catch you guys in the next one. Let's win together.